Hello YouTube, it's Mr. Paparazzi and we're back with another retouching tutorial. In this photo, we're going to do the ins and outs starting from healing, skin processing, sharpening, color correction, and a lot more other new tricks and nuances that I've come across. I know I've been out for a while, but I've got my computer back and running and I'm ready to teach once more. So, as we normally used to start out, we're going to make a blank layer just for demonstration purposes, and we're going to point out all the flaws and things that need to be fixed. Now, I've also noticed that when you zoom in, try not to swipe back and forth to zoom in like this, because if you can see down here in the corner, as you swipe, the percentages either increase or decrease. But for some reason, once the percents are at 25, 33, 60, 50, 66, 100, and 200, those are the zoom levels where you can actually see all the texture of the image. Of course, it looks visible here, but once you hit 100, you tend to see everything a little bit more clearer. So just keep that in mind when you're doing like your micro adjustments here and so on. So no need for a blank layer. We're just going to go into it and I'll show you guys exactly what I'm doing from start to finish. So let's delete this layer and we're going to start with this layer 1 here. So the first thing I want to tackle, I like to work from the outside and make my way in. So I look at the image from the outside and I can see that there are a lot of stray hairs on the side. So what we're going to do is use our clone stamp tool and tackle those for a bit. So we press S to pull up our clone stamp tool, and here above are my settings. So I have my flow, I have my opacity at 100% and my flow at about 20, and I'm gonna use a somewhat hard brush. Just put it up to 75 to be safe. Yeah, so we're just gonna start sampling from the side and removing these unwanted things from the side. So this is how we're going to clean up the hair. And for demonstrational purposes, I'm just going to zoom this up because I'm legit just going around the whole head, so I don't really need to sit here and do it the whole time. So let's zoom this up. Okay, now we're back. So of course I would have went a little bit more in depth. You know, you can bring up the clone stamp a little bit here and try to brush over that area, sample from the side so it can look a little bit more full. Let's crop the image in a little bit more tighter. Perfect. Bring this up a little bit more tighter. Now we can create a new layer, and now we're going to work on our healing process. So we're going to press J and we're going to cycle through the different healing brushes, and I'm going to use let's see which brush this is. I believe this is the spot healing. Yeah, so we're going to just zoom in a little bit closer, not too microscopic, and we're just going to sample, make sure everything's deselected, and we're just going to sample over the areas that need to be fixed. Perfect. And And I'm not going to go super microscopic with this, but you guys get the idea of what I'm doing. So we're just sampling clean skin from an adjacent area, and we're just covering over what needs to be covered. This is good. Just small areas that need to be taken care of. You can even get down here and take out some of the necklines, you know, if you need to. And those come away pretty easily. Yes, we can get rid of those pretty nicely. We can also get rid of those with dodge and burn, but the healing brush works pretty well. Okay, cool. I mean, you can get a little bit more precise if needed, but I believe for the demonstration purposes of this video, you guys get an idea of what I'm going at. So just small blemishes. You could get rid of these little hairs on top and so on. All right, let's tackle this eyebrow right here. So, you know, a lot of people ask me how to do my brows and so on. What I do recommend is that you guys watch makeup tutorials on YouTube on how to make, you know, eyebrows or how to do makeup on eyebrows, and that should give you an idea. It's not just, you know, doing what I'm about to do. You actually have to have, you know, in your head an idea what a polished makeup eyebrow looks like, so you can, you know, create it. Fortunately, this makeup artist did a good job with the eyebrow already, so we don't have to do too much work. But sometimes I'm in situations where I turn an eyebrow, you know, from, you know, one stage to the other. It may take quite a little bit of time, but, you know, with a good makeup artist and a good you know, retouching technique, you'll be able to take care of it. So I didn't catch this area here. We can zoom in to the eye for a bit, and we could take some of these out, and we can get rid of these textures here. So like I said before, we're just sampling skin. From an adjacent area. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Feel free to subscribe. If you haven't already, check out my Instagram at mister.paparazzi. I have a lot of cool content on there. And if you're willing to take your photography to the next level, please check out my full beauty retouching course. We go in depth with image sharpening, color grading, post-processing, and everything of that sort. I'll leave all the information in the comments or the description for the video. All right, now let's get our clone stamp tool once more. We could get a little close to the edge. So the idea is to just keep the brow as smooth as possible. So we can go not too far, but we can go to the edge a bit. And we're basically trying to keep the brow in line. That's all we're doing. Now, I was wondering why it looked like that. Okay, not with our healing brush, our clone stamp tool. That's what we're gonna use. Let's get a little microscopic. Yes, this is what I was going for. Okay, cool. So we're just coloring around the edges of the brows. And also, you have to keep in mind where you're sampling from. The skin below is pretty clean, so this is not going to be a difficult job for me. But I'm telling you, once you practice this, it's going to be a lot more easier. So in my head, I already have the idea of what the brow is supposed to look like. So I'm just putting my pen strokes in the area of where my mind is telling me where it needs to go. So the cleaner you do it, the more precise the brow is going to look. Some looks call for a precise brow. Some I like to keep it a bit natural and messy. It depends on the look that I'm going for. So this is pretty good. Let's try to sample a little bit more. All right, let's see. So this is before, after, before and after. I see here it looks a little tight, so I can bend it up a bit more to make it look a little bit more tapered. Let's get this little cool spot in there. All right. Cool. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Let's take a look at that brow. Let's back up a little bit. So this is before and this is after. Pretty great transition if you ask me. And usually, depending on the way the model's positioned, I don't really touch the other eyebrow. It's more of the one that's, facing the camera the most. All right, let's move on to the next step. So we're going to make another layer. And we're going to start our frequency separation. So let's hit our frequency separation tab. And we're going to use a radius of about 2%. Well, 2 pixels, and press enter. And we should have a setup here. So we have 3 layers here: the high layer, a blank layer, and the low layer. The low layer consists of all the colors in the image. The high layer consists of all the texture in the image. And the layer in the middle is basically splitting the two from each other. So we're gonna get a balance between the two. And once we get a balance between the two, we'll be able to, split things and, even out the inconsistencies in the skin. So we're going to press B for our brush tool. And here are my brush settings for 100% opacity and about 2% flow. So we're just going to look for blotchy areas that need to be corrected. And we should not be doing any more than 2 or 3 strokes back and forth. Some people like to turn off the texture layer and work under. I like to get a visual representation of exactly what I'm doing, so I know I don't go too far or I don't underdo it, or whatever you guys may call it. A lot of these other areas could be fixed with dodging and burning. And we're going to get to that in the next step. You can make your brush bigger for bigger areas like this, and it'll be much easier for you to navigate through it. So as we toggle this on and off, you can see we're just doing slight changes, subtle changes in the transitions of the photo. And also, when you look up makeup tutorials, the same technique and process of what I'm doing here is what they basically do to apply makeup to the skin. So if you get familiar with a lot of makeup retouching videos or makeup artists, or just go online and type in, beauty makeup or editorial makeup from start to finish, you'll get a better idea of what they're doing with the skin, how they're contouring the skin, how they're highlighting the skin, how they're applying foundation to adjust some of the inconsistencies in the skin and everything of that sort. So I tend not to get too crazy around the neck area, just a few strokes, because in a beauty photo, most of the time the eyes are the most in focus and the neck isn't. So if you go too crazy with the frequency separation on the neck will start to look fake, and we don't want that. Unless that's what the client, requests, then, we got to do things we're not usually comfortable doing to please our clients. So I'm just scrubbing over some of these inconsistencies. Nothing major. All right, let's dive in a little bit more. So as we toggle the frequency separation on and off, we did pretty good. All right, let's make a new layer from here, and we're going to open up our dodge and burn setup. Now, as we can see these light and dark patches, we can use dodging and burning to fix them. So for dodging, anything that's dark, we can lighten it so it can even out. Usually when I do this process, I use a flow rate of about 1%, just so, I can be able to work efficiently. I would also like to add a noise layer so I can get a better visual representation of what I'm tackling. So now let's go to our dodge layer, press B, and make sure your foreground color is white because the layers are now inverted to black. So if you want to relieve or release or view what's under the black, you would have to paint in white. So you can make our brush not too small, but a decent size where we can fix these subtle changes. Now, this is considered micro dodging and burning. This is not a global dodge and burn or, a dodge and burn where we're contouring the skin. We're going to do that afterwards. So I'm legit taking my brush and I'm lightening the dark patches that I see around her face in certain areas. You actually could use this method instead of frequency separation altogether, which is what I normally do, but I want to give everyone a gist of each method and how to use it. So, everyone's different. Everyone's approach is different. Some people like dodge and burn. Some people like frequency separation. Some people have a knack for both. Some, I just want to be fair. I don't want to use one method and say, hey, this is the ultimate way. This is the only way you can do this. And, art is art. Your image is how you create your images, however you come about. At the end of the day, they're really going to focus on the end result. Not saying that you shouldn't pay attention to your technical things. You should always be mindful of what you're doing and how you're approaching the end result of your image. But, whatever works for you is what's going to work for you in the long run. Don't mind the hissing sound in the background. It's just my computer fans working, so my computer won't overheat. Yeah, we're pretty much coming along. I'll go more in depth with this, but for viewing purposes, not going to keep you guys here too long. So I just got rid of a few dark patches. Now I can see that this patch here is a little bit light. This is where we go to our burn layer and we just darken it so it can blend in with everything. So now we're paying attention to the spots that are a little bit lighter than normal, and we're going to darken them just so things can fit right in. And be careful, areas like this and below the brow and everything like that, those are natural highlight areas, so you don't want to darken those because you're going to flatten the image, and no one wants a flat image, do they? Alrighty. So we did a little bit of dodge and burn. Let's delete this. Let's toggle on our dodge, and we can see the slight adjustments that we made. Let's keep that there. We're going to delete this black and white. We're going to make a new layer. And now, by making that new layer, I'm basically pressing Shift, Option, Command E on a Mac. But I have a shortcut to my Wacom Intuos Pro. So I'm doing all of that in a click of a button. So now let's focus on our sharpening. So, well, no, not our sharpening. We're going to dodge and burn some more. So that was a little contour dodge and burn. Let's delete this layer. This little hole on the ear is bothering me for a while. So I'm just going to heal that out. And heal this out. Good. All right. So we're looking good. So this is what we started with. And here we are now. So what we started with, that's what we are. Now, let's make a new layer. Just have a knack for doing that. And we're going to set up another dodge and burn setup. And we're going to dodge and burn the image from a little further back because we're not getting so microscopic. So let's press B for our brush tool. And we're going to get a flow rate of about 4. Let's try 3 to be safe. And make sure if you're painting on black, your foreground color over here is going to be white. So whatever is light, we're just going to lighten that area once more and bring dimension to the face. So all the light highlight areas are just going to bring those out a little bit more, and so on. Cool. Alrighty. I'm not going to go super crazy with this. Perfect. Just lightening a few areas. Now let's add some contour. So we're going to darken like the edges of the face, around the rim line, and so on. Under the jawline here, I'm going to contour that. Remember, we're on our burn section now, so whatever's dark, we're darkening it to add more dimension to the face. It could darken right here. It could darken right above the lashes. And try not to add any artificial shadows. So if something's not dark, don't try to darken it, and force the shadow. It's going to look artificial. So we can even get inside the ears here a bit, down the neckline, and the collarbones, and around the rim of the shoulder. And we can get to this point. Now, let's toggle on our burn. It looks pretty good. And if you press Option and click, you can get a sketch of what you burned on the image. So, and all you have to do is press Option, click once more, and then you will return back to your original sketch that you had prior. So let's click that. Now let's remove this black and white layer, and we're going to change our blend mode to luminosity. If we toggle on our dodge and burn, you can see how far we've come. You can also make a copy or a duplicate of what you just did in some cases, and I do that at times, but I just try to keep the opacity at about 32%, which is fine. Now, we're going to run my sharpen action. So by clicking. And when I click, I already have this set to a radius of 26 pixels and a threshold of 7 levels. And we're just going to press OK. And it's going to run this action. And it's going to uplift the entire image and add sharpness to it. Alrighty, so we just added a little sharpness to the image, and I like this. Also, another trick I've learned, if you double click on the layer, we get the layer style and a whole bunch of, other technicalities that we can play with. But what I like to do is I like to split or taper down the effect that I put on the image. So if you see the underlying layer, there's 4 arrows. There's 2 dark arrows and 2 light arrows. If you hold Option and drag, it'll split the effect. So you see the dark arrow is now half, and we're just gonna drag that all the way to the other side and press OK. Now I like it's still sharp, but it tapers it down a bit. And now if you want a little bit more sharpness, you could just make a duplicate copy of that. And now we're extra sharp. So let's make another layer after our sharpness. And let's press O to toggle between our dodge, burn, and sponge tool. We're going to use the dodge. I have my range set to mid-tones, and I have my exposure set to 30%, and we're going to protect the tones. So what we're going to do is the highlights in the makeup, we can make those pop by just drawing over them slightly. Not too much, just a little bit. Right. And be careful how to do this. We don't want to damage the photo. Perfect. Just the highlights, get this little rim of the mouth and so on, probably in this area here. Even in the eyeballs, from the catch light of a reflector, possibly on the nose. Try not to force it. It's not there too much. And a little bit on the collarbone is cool. That's fine. A little bit right here on the shoulder. All right. Now we're looking glossy. I believe that's a little bit too much, so let's bring our blend mode down to about 65%. And let's make another layer. Now, let's play with this pink background. So as we choose our hue saturation, we could click this picker and tap here, and it's selecting the reds. And as we toggle between the reds, the background changes. But you have to understand that when dealing with skin, especially women of color or anyone, the skin spectrum goes from about red to a yellowish tone. So anywhere between red, orange, and yellow, if you toggle that anywhere on a hue saturation level, it'll all adjust as one. But this mostly happens, you know, with people of color. Now, as we move this back and forth, we do only want to focus on the background. So what we can do is we can mask out the skin. So let's change it to a crazy color so we know we're not, you know, touching the skin. And so we know it's blue. Now we're going to press B, and we're going to use a flow rate of 100%. And we're going to just paint in black over this white mask to mask out the skin. So press X to toggle between the foreground colors, and press D to reset the foreground colors. So now as we paint, we're just going to paint over the regular skin. I'm going to do a rough draft for now, and you know, we can get around the edges in a bit. Just getting a rough draft of the main things that need to be fixed, and we can zoom in and get a little bit more microscopic. So let's be careful with our edges here. Can still color this in. Looking good. And as you get to the edges, just be slightly careful as you stay in the lines, because it'll bring back the background to whatever color the skin is. And that's not what we want. Good. Let's color this thing in. If you want to get the smaller your brush, the more precise it's going to be. But this is for demonstrational purposes, so I'm not going to try to get too carried away. All right, now I remember there was a piece in the corner. I got a little messed up. Yeah, this is fine. Now we can see that some of the background here got colored in, so we can just press X to bring the background back to where it was. Perfect. So now that we maxed out the background only, as we toggle this back and forth, we can choose a very amount of colors, and this is super cool. So I like this blue that we were going for. Now that we have control over the blue, you can saturate it a bit more. You can lighten or darken it a bit more. So if we lighten it here, if we darken it here, it gives a little bit more taste. So I like it about here. This is fine. And you know, sometimes if you turn off the background layer and you press Shift Command E, you're now left with the background layer and your current layer. So I like to do this back and forth to get an idea of where we started and where we'd ended up. So this is where we started, and here we are. Started, finished, and here we are again. So let's zoom out a bit. So this is where we started. Now we're through. So you can see all the nice skin transitions. Or eyebrow up here is nice and tapered and sharpened, and everything looks nice and intact. So that's it. Start to finish. Photo retouching, sharpening, healing, frequency separation, micro dodge and burn, contour dodge and burn, sharpening, color correction, changing the tones and colors of the background. Once again, YouTube, this is Mr. Paparazzi speaking. You can follow me on Facebook at Mr. Paparazzi. Check out my website at www.mrpaparazzi.com. Also follow us on Instagram at mister.paparazzi. If you haven't subscribed to my page, please do so now. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Signing out.